Hi. Hi everyone and Merry Christmas. I hope you're all having a wonderful holiday season. Today's episode is one I've been planning for a long time. We're going to talk about the formation and evolution of Chinese characters. We won't just talk about linguistics, we'll also explore history, the myths, and the culture behind them. It is a fascinating and meaningful journey, and I hope that on this special day, it can bring you a bit of intellectual joy. Okay, let's get started. For most learners, what makes Chinese so captivating and so mysterious is its writing system. This enigmatic system, full of patterns and symbols, works almost like a cipher that preserves some of the earliest human thoughts and memories. Hanzi has fundamentally shaped the structure of the Chinese language and even the personality and the values of the nation. But how were they created? And how did they evolve into the system we use today? 仓颉造字. In any early society, people turn to myths to explain the world. In the West, you have Olympian gods. In China, we have Pangu, a giant who split the sky and the earth apart with an axe, and Nuwa, a goddess who created humans from clay. When it comes to the origin of Chinese characters, we have the legend of Cangjie, 仓颉造字. According to the myth, he lived around 3000 BC and had an extraordinary experience. He had double-pupiled eyes. It sounds impossible, right? But perhaps it is just a metaphor for his gift of observation. The legend says he created the earliest characters based on nature: the stars, the patterns on turtle shells, the feathers of birds, mountains, rivers, and more. It was said that the moment the characters were completed, 造化不能藏其形，故天雨粟；灵怪不能遁其形，故鬼夜哭. This is a poetic description. It implied that with the creation of writing, the secrets of the universe were revealed. All earthly phenomena could now be recorded, leaving no truth hidden, and even the spirits cried because their secrets could no longer be concealed. Of course, this is a legend. Whether Cangjie existed is a matter of historical debate, and even if he did, no single person could invent an entire writing system alone. However, the fundamental premise remains true. Chinese writing began with observing and depicting the natural world. As we discussed previously, China entered its era of unification with the Qin dynasty. Before Qin, there was the Zhou dynasty, which lasted for nearly 800 years. This was the backdrop of Chinese civilization, a golden age of philosophy, where great thinkers like Confucius and Mencius emerged. But before that, there was an ancient, mysterious dynasty known as the Shang dynasty. Before the discovery of the oracle bones, the Shang dynasty was almost like Atlantis in Chinese history. It was a legendary era mentioned only in a few lines of ancient texts, with almost no physical evidence. It was said to command thousands of vassal states, but after it fell, it seemed to vanish into the mist of time. However, its memory lived on in a famous household legend, the investiture of the gods, 封神演义. This mythological novel is based on the historical event Wu Wang Fa Zhou, the Zhou king overthrowing the last Shang king. Many characters from the novel have become deeply embedded cultural symbols in China. For example, 姜子牙、妲己、杨戬、哪吒. Now, let's bring it back to writing. In 1899, oracle bones were discovered. is the earliest known, fully developed Chinese writing system, dating back 3,300 to 3,600 years to the late Shang Dynasty. But here is the fascinating part. The Shang people didn't carve these characters on turtle shells to record history for us. They were talking to the gods. It was acts of deviation. They would carve a question onto the shell, apply fire, and interpret the cracks caused by the heat as answers from the divine. While they weren't intended as history books, these bronze inscriptions preserve a vast amount of real information: wars, sacrifices, agriculture, and astronomical events. Today, about 4,500 distinct characters from oracle bones have been identified, and roughly one-third have been deciphered. Here is a useful analogy. Think of the relationship between oracle bones and Chinese characters, like the relationship between Latin and modern Romance languages, like French or Italian. But this raises a question. Why did the Latin fracture into dozens of different languages, French, Spanish, Italian, yet the oracle bone script evolved down a single path into Hanzi without splitting into a family of languages? The answer is simple. Latin fractured because the Roman Empire collapsed and the civilization fragmented. Language developed independently in isolated regions. As we mentioned in episode 1, after the Qin dynasty unified the 6 states, it also standardized the writing. From the point onwards, the writing system remained unified because the civilization remained unified. Language and civilization are interdependent. Chinese characters have passed through several major stages: oracle bone script, bronze script, seal script, clerical script, and finally regular script. The latest stage, regular script, Kaishu, became standard around the late Han Dynasty. By that time, the structure of Chinese characters was essentially complete. Across these stages, you can see a trend of standardization from complex, curved drawings to straighter, more structured forms, to the clean, abstract, square-shaped characters we use today. You may already know that the modern Chinese has 2 writing systems, simplified and traditional. Traditional Chinese retain the forms standardized in the Han Dynasty. Simplified Chinese was created through merging, reducing, or substituting components and was introduced in mainland China in the 1950s. Today, mainland China and Singapore use simplified, while Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan use traditional. But why simplify them? Well, the direct goal was literacy and modernization. The driving force was a century-long crisis of cultural confidence. From the Opium War in 1840 to the mid-20th century, China endured 100 years of humiliation, war, colonization, and invasion. Faced with the turbulence, many intellectuals blamed traditional culture for the nation's tragedy and weakness. Hanzi and the carrier of culture became a target. This sparked a fierce script reform. Radical reformers even wanted to abolish Chinese characters entirely and replace it with the Western alphabet. The scholar Qian Xuantong famously declared, "As long as the characters remain, China is doomed to perish." Even literary giants like Lu Xun criticized the script as a barrier to progress. The promotion of simplified characters was actually a victory for the moderate faction. It was a pragmatic compromise: keep the characters but make them easier to learn. Today, as China regains strength, that century-long trauma has faded. No one questions the value of Chinese characters anymore. Instead, we embrace our tradition and culture with renewed rationality and pride. Now that we understand history, a question remains: what are the methods used to create different characters, and how did these characters represent abstract ideas from concrete, specific objects? Actually, our ancestors have long ago summarized this knowledge, traditionally known as the six scripts. It refers to the six methods of forming and using Chinese characters, and mastering it was an essential skill for ancient Chinese nobles and intellectuals. Pictographs, 象形, ideographs, 指示, associative compounds, 会意, phonetic loan, 假借, semantic phonetic compounds, 形声, derivative cognates, 转注. Pictographs are the most primitive method, involving the observation and drawing of an object. For example, the character for ox and sheep clearly depict their heads, with upward pointing horns for the ox and downward curving horns for the sheep, which is very visual. Both animals were important sacrifices in ancient times, so using their heads for representation was very direct and practical. Consider another two characters, water and rain. A flowing, curved line represents a river, which is water, and when water drips down from a roof, that's rain. Let's move to ideographs, which are a bit more abstract. They use a symbol alone or add a symbol to an existing pictograph to express an idea. For example, up and down, you start with the baseline and adding a small line above it signifies up. Adding it below signifies down. Another example is root and tip. We take the character for tree and add a line at the bottom to indicate the root. Adding it at the top indicates the tip. It's wonderfully simple and clever, isn't it? Now we come to associative compounds. This is where it gets even more interesting. Associative compounds combine two or more existing characters to create a new one, whose meaning is derived from an association of its parts. For instance, a character for rest is made of person and tree. A person leaning against the tree signifies to rest. Another one is trust. It combines person and speech. A person's words should be honest, so it means trust and belief. In the early stages of creation, our ancestors were incredibly sensitive to connotation. This profound emphasis on meaning and implication is a defining feature of Chinese culture. But what about concepts that couldn't be created, just like above? Well, if we can't create it, we borrow it. A phonetic loan takes an existing character and uses it for a different concept which doesn't have its own character. This often leads to one character having multiple meanings. For example, the character 我, meaning I or me, was originally a pictograph for some tool or weapon. Over time, it was borrowed to present the first-person pronouns, and this original meaning faded away. It's very convenient. However, if one character has too many meanings, it makes the language harder to understand. To solve the problem, our ancestors invented a revolutionary method, the semantic phonetic compound, which now makes up the vast majority, around 90% of Chinese characters. The compounds have two parts. One part, the semantic radical, indicates the general meaning. The other, the phonetic component, gives a clue to its pronunciation. It's a very logical system. It allows us to tell between different characters that sound similar. For example, consider these 4 characters. The phonetic component, 青, is the same for all. Its original meaning is the color between blue and green, later extended to freshness and youth. However, their semantic components are different. Water for clear, insect for dragonfly, hot for emotion, and sun for sunny weather. You don't need to worry about this one too much. In Chinese, the number of characters using this principle is very small, and even its definition is still debated now. You can simply understand this principle as a character split into 2 which could be used to explain each other. So that's it, our 6 methods for character creation. After understanding the whole logic behind it, I think all of us would be amazed, even awed by the wisdom, imagination, and creativity of the ancient people. Chinese characters possess a unique charm and historical vibe. A single character can record an event, a fact, and express what we see and how we feel. But I also know it's hard even for Chinese people. But the good news is there are roughly 8,000 characters still in use today, and the most common ones are just, around 3,000 to 4,000, which means mastering those 3,000 characters will allow you to understand 99% of daily communication. Okay, that's all for today's video. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. Besides my online courses, I also offer one-on-one Mandarin lessons. Feel free to check out my website for more details. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Your support means a lot to me. See you next time. Bye. Merry Christmas.